You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Solana, Doge, and more. Cryptocurrencies and digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity, provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments throughout the world's leading crypto derivatives markets. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amber Data. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amber Data delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amber Data eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of crypto derivatives. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. It is Monday. It is time for another Crypto Rundown, the program here on the network where we go beyond our traditional stomping grounds. Not going to talk about your SPY or your VIX or your Apple or your Tesla options here. No, those are the other shows on the network. No, we're going to focus in on what's going on in the world of crypto, on the derivatives front, the volume, the volatility, the skew, all that fun, and a whole bunch more. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the THE, optionsinsider.com, as well as from the aforementioned network. Hard to believe, but this January marks 17 years since we started doing this whole options podcast thing. The first of many to come down the road. Pre-iPhone, all sorts of madness. Had to have an RSS reader to get it, so all sorts of fun been going on the network for the past 17 years, including the inclusion of a little show called The Crypto Rundown back, I want to say, in 2018, our show, not that long after the futures were listed here in the U.S., where everyone really got excited about crypto derivatives. Crypto Rundown joined the party. Of course, if you're just listening to the Crypto Rundown, man, you're missing out. So wherever you're getting this, make sure you subscribe to the full network. Nearly a dozen other programs coming at you throughout the week. So a lot of great content. A lot of you coming to this are crypto native, learning about the world of options for the first time. So we hold your hand with a lot of great educational content like Options Bootcamp, Options Playbook Radio. You get a little bit more advanced. You graduate to shows like the Option Block and maybe even Volatility Views. And you go on from there, all sorts of fun to be had over there. And of course, if you want a little bit more fun in your lives after you subscribe to the whole network, another fun place you can go is theoptionsinsider.com/pro. That's where we have two other exclusive programs coming at you, including a lot of great pro Q&A sessions with a lot of people who cover the intersection of derivatives and crypto. So we talked to a lot of great guests on that front over the years, as well as, of course, Options Oddities every week. Live access to this, every other show we do, great giveaways, and a whole bunch more. In fact, speaking of the more, since our last show, of course, we were off last week for the MLK holiday here in the U.S. Since our last episode, I had a great chance to run the options panel at this year's Securities Traders Association conference. Took place last Wednesday. I mentioned that because I was joined by our good buddy on this show, Mr. Greg Magadini from Amber Data, and as well as a bunch of other great guests to talk about all things crypto derivatives there. So that was kind of fascinating. If you want to check that out and you couldn't make it, you didn't buy a ticket to Stack this year, didn't want to fly into frozen Chicago in the middle of January, I get it. Luckily for you, someone, I won't say who, may have recorded said session, and it's being cut together by our editors right now. So it should be available on the Pro sometime this week. So if you want to check that out, didn't want to buy a ticket to Stack this year or just fly into Chicago, head on over to theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Deep dive into all things crypto derivatives. It was a fun one. And speaking of fun, let's have some more fun as we roll out the crypto hot seat.
Forget about cold storage. It's time to turn up the heat on thought leaders from the world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time to take their place on the Crypto Hot Seat.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Crypto Hot Seat, the portion of the show where we welcome on guests from throughout the world of crypto derivatives and indeed beyond, and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. And next up in the old Crypto Hot Seat is a newcomer to the program and indeed to the network. He is Andrew Saunders, the Chief Strategy Officer at Hashflow. Andrew, welcome to the Crypto Rundown program.
Thank you, sir. Happy 17th birthday.
Yes, it sounds crazy when you say it out loud, but we have been doing this thing for a while, which is kind of crazy.
We were early.
We were a little bit early. You had to have an RSS reader. There was no such thing as an iPhone. It was pretty hardcore in the early days, but luckily the podcast world has grown quite a bit since then.
Love it.
I don't have to explain to my parents and grandparents what a podcast is anymore. So that at least is a nice change we've seen out there. But Andrew, as I mentioned, this is your first time joining us on the old network. So let's start as we do with all of our first timers. Give us an overview of your background in the world of crypto and indeed traditional finance, if there is some lurking there, and then what it is you do over there at Hashflow.
Sure. So I guess I'll start more on the finance side. So, my career actually started in Hollywood. So I worked at a creative artist agency for about 10 years and was both kind of a bridge to, the marketing industry, advertising industry, but then also kind of, Silicon Valley and startups, and social platforms kind of early in the day. Then went over to NBC Universal to build their kind of in-house marketing agency, and then, went to a Google founded media company after that I had helped kind of launch. And so during those days, worked very closely with all the big kind of TradFi folks. So, Citibank, Chase, Santander, folks like that around the world. So I've been doing, 360 marketing for a number of years and also working with a lot of folks in the space. In terms of, how I first got into crypto, it's an interesting story. So, prior to crypto, I was global head of entertainment and culture for Amazon headquarters, which really meant that I was kind of building, a 360 kind of marketing business, not just across kind of all of Amazon products, but also, every country kind of around the world. And a lot of what I was focused on, was kind of these innovative marketing platforms and ad platforms. So, if you ever see, Amazon products in Netflix, that was my team. But then also podcasts, we were looking at podcasts in the early days and saying, there's got to be a way to measure this stuff. There's got to be a way to quantify it. And so they would literally give me, a team of data scientists and say, go figure this stuff out. And so, for anyone listening, I can tell you podcasts perform from a marketing perspective, which is great. And so at that time, obviously surrounded by very, intellectually curious people, a lot of tech folks, got very crypto curious myself, I would say in kind of 2017, 2018. And then during COVID, live in LA with my family, had a lot of time, to kind of listen to podcasts and dive deeper. And just, I think like anyone, got the bug. And the more, down the rabbit hole that I went, I think the more curious I got, and more passionate that I got. And so, my first foray in FADYOR was actually through Ethereum, not even Bitcoin. And then started to get really interested in kind of the infrastructure space and, the things that are effectively connecting the future. And so was the first CMO of Arbitrum, which is obviously, the number one kind of layer 2 for Ethereum. And so was helping to kind of, build and scale that, launch new chains, and also kind of work with, hundreds of companies across different sectors in the industry. And here I am today. But yeah, love crypto, very, very personally passionate about it. I think not only just in terms of, the possibility and potential, but also things like financial inclusion and, enabling folks in other countries to obviously have a better quality of life as well.
We've had a lot of crypto origin stories on this show over the years.
Yeah.
I think you might be the first to start in Hollywood and end up in crypto. So you get the feather in your cap there of having the more unique path into the world of crypto here, Andrew.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because on the Hollywood side, you have kind of the traditional Hollywood business, and my role was kind of the everything else. It was, if these are valuable people and valuable IP, how are we taking this into the tech sector? How are we taking this into the finance sector, into, Madison Avenue? So I think I've been a little bit of a bridge my entire career, and a little bit ahead of the curve on most things. And so when I realized, the possibility and potential in so many areas, it was just hard for me to not, make the jump.
Well, you have now made the jump over there to Hashflow. So tell our listeners, what the heck is Hashflow? What do you guys do at Data?
Yeah, sure. So, Hashflow is a multi-chain DEX. So, easiest way to think about it is some folks like to trade on Ethereum, but then obviously a lot of natives like to trade on L2s and Alt1s. And so we really kind of enable, all of that, right? So if you want to trade on Ethereum, you can. If you want to trade on Arbitrum, Solana, Avalanche, Polygon, the list goes on. So it's really kind of a central place for you to kind of trade across pretty much any of these major chains. The other thing that I think is exciting is recently we launched on Solana, and we enabled actually cross-chain. And so you can cross-chain from both Ethereum and Arbitrum. And I think what's exciting to me as someone that's also a bit of a day trader is it's native, right? There's no synthetic assets. When you look at kind of the DEX in general, even pre kind of 2.0, which I'll explain in a second, I think part of what was exciting to me was the approach was very different from a typical kind of AMM-based model. We have what's an intent-based RFQ model. And so what that means is basically, instead of crowdsourced, AMM pools, we're working with premium market makers, like Wintermute. And so what's really exciting is when you go to make a trade, not only is the price you see the price you get, but also number two, no slippage, number three, full MEV protection. And then number four, because of our kind of hybrid approach, the gas fees tend to be lower. We recently launched what I call Hashflow 2.0, which is really an attempt at I think, bringing together, again, even more fragmented liquidity and listings. And so now what basically happens through what's called smart order routing is, you go to make a trade on the DEX, and if a market maker's not, providing enough liquidity for an asset or isn't making a pool for that asset, it then routes it through all available liquidity sources to literally find you kind of the best price across the entire industry. And so we really do lead into this notion of best pricing. And you'll see on social, we do a lot of these screenshots, on trades on Hashflow versus other DEXs. But I would say, again, 9 times out of 10, we do tend to have the best prices, hands down. Yeah.
Wintermute, we had those folks on not too long ago here as well. So yes,
nice.
Intriguing stuff. A lot of intermarriages, interoperability going on. It's an incestuous world, the crypto space.
Yeah, a lot of interop. I mean, what's exciting, I think, for us is, every token available on mainnet we have. With the recent Solana launch, we now have a entire base of kind of Solana-based tokens. We're also going to be doing, we can talk about this later in the show, a little bit more on the L2 side. And so, the goal here is, can you find one, a DEX that's easy to use, two, that has the best prices, and three, every single token I want to trade and the liquidity I need to trade them is all in one place. So really trying to, take away a lot of the pain points, I think, that both crypto native and normie traders face.
So, Andrew, as you can imagine, we've had a lot of exchanges come on the show over the years, every centralized and otherwise. All of them are the best things since sliced bread. All of them are bringing something new to the table. It sounds like over there at Hashflow, you guys are really leaning on the interoperability of the different chains and also some of the, I guess, for lack of a better word, price improvement. Are those the two things that are really kind of setting you apart?
I think so, absolutely. And I think, it's very simple. Again, as someone that trades, that's, actively been a crypto native for a number of years, and we have a lot of folks like this on the team, it's really, again, that North Star is creating the best experience in DeFi, right? And so, it's not uncommon that folks have to try multiple DEXs or even aggregators to find their token, or they want to go make a trade, the liquidity is not available, or they're using, an AMM-based DEX and the slippage is egregious. It's really how do you create, an offering that just removes all these pain points for folks and ultimately just becomes their home, for trading.
Now, you mentioned you built out now, I guess, 2.0 on Solana. I want to dig into that a little bit. There's a lot built into that, which I think is fascinating. First off, if we were chatting, let's say a year ago, you probably wouldn't even bring that up. Or if you did, it would be very buried in the press release because no one wanted to touch Solana. It was the unspeakable thing post FTX. It was far too intricately linked with everything that went on there. And everyone thought maybe it was kind of done as an asset. We even stopped talking about the options flow on it on this program because a lot of the platforms we were pulling the data from washed their hands of Solana. They wanted nothing more to do with it. It was languishing exactly a year ago. It was languishing sub $10. Fast forward a year, man, what a difference a year makes. It's up around $100 somewhere now. It's gotten higher than that. And it's suddenly okay, Andrew, to talk about Solana again and to say, hey, I'm building on Solana again. So I'm curious for you folks, what was the thought process there? Was it just the inter-asset operability, for lack of a better word? Is that what drove that decision? Why'd you guys decide to go 2.0 all in on Solana?
Yeah, I'll take a step back. I think, when I was at Arbitrum, obviously, we were building kind of the home of DeFi. There's a lot of protocols there. There's a lot of liquidity and active traders there. It was interesting because, again, when I was looking at kind of like who's the competitive set, like who are we really up against, it wasn't just, L2s or folks, shifting towards the ZK space. It's also alt ones, because if you think about, again, a layer 2 solving the blockchain trilemma and being the scalability layer, a lot of these alt ones obviously position themselves as being able to achieve all three. And so, it was so interesting because Solana was definitely one that would keep me up at night. And I think that the TLDR there is a couple of things. One, I think if you look at kind of, again, the last cycle, you had a lot of young folks trading on Solana, right? There were a lot of NFTs. There were some, gaming-oriented projects. But at the end of the day, they built a very, very strong community that I think even through the bear market has kind of remained intact. And so the other thing I kind of take a look at on Solana is, if you look at the backgrounds, obviously, of the founders, you have folks that come from, big business like Qualcomm. They understand mass adoption. They understand, what it takes to scale. And so again, when you look at that chain, it's an easy to use chain. The fees are very low. The speed is very fast. And then you look at some of the updates coming when, like Fired Answer and things like that. I was on a podcast recently where they asked me a little bit of like, what's my take on every chain? And I think when I look at Solana, I definitely, coming from, big traditional Web 2 businesses, see that as a place that folks may want to build, right? And so again, as we look at kind of the next bull run coming, we're going to see, a lot more normies coming into the space. I think that is a very easy place for them to enter. And I do think that you're going to see, the community that's been there the entire time really start to build and foster a larger community. The other thing I would say is, I wouldn't be surprised to see more DeFi projects launch on Solana, again, as maybe an alternative to trading on a layer 2, right? And so, long term, I'm pretty bullish. The other thing I would just say is like there's a lot of, again, really interesting projects and founders being built over there. I look at, token extensions that are coming to Solana as something that's, worth keeping an eye on. But again, I think that the TLDR is, good tech, good team, very focused building during the bear market, and then very real community. And community, I'll tell you as a marketer, it's not an easy thing to build. You can't fake it. And there's a lot of power behind it. So I think, those are kind of my points on the Solana front.
Yeah, we've all seen that power play out in very stark terms just over the past few months. Yeah. Massive run that Solana is on. And as you just pointed out, we're kind of having those conversations again that we had about a year and a half ago, I would say. People were starting to talk about Solana back then as a competitor / rival / alternative to ETH and some other projects out there. Then obviously we all know what happened with FTX. Those conversations went away. And now it seems like they're back and helped out, no doubt, by the just $100 price now on Solana. If you needed more reinforcement there, Andrew, that there's backing behind this, just look at the price.
Well, and I think the other thing too, just to call out is, again, for someone that's a pretty active day trader, when we saw the ETH gas fees surge recently, obviously, a single transaction or trade on Ethereum can be quite expensive from a gas perspective. And so, I'll even tell listeners at home how I trade. I typically have, a bag on Arbitrum, and obviously, the trades that I'm making on Arbitrum on Hashflow are cents on the dollar. And then I had, prior to 2.0, a bag on Solana because there's obviously different tokens listed there. And so at the end of the day, even when, Ethereum gas fees were surging, I was still able to actively trade and not take, large losses on gas fees. And then I think what's been exciting to me, even on a personal level, is now that we have the cross chain between Arbitrum and Solana and Ethereum and Solana, I can also take bags on Arb and Sol and just go back and forth. And so, I can still actively day trade without, seeing the impact of high gas fees, which has been really nice, honestly.
Well, we have a lot to get to here, including some interesting things you guys have cooking up your sleeves over there at Hashflow, including something that caught my eye called the Hashverse. What is the Hashverse? What are we talking about here, Andrew?
Yeah, sure. So again, going back to my Arbitrum days, we had a pretty large GameFi ecosystem, and I would say a lot of our community was even tied to the GameFi space. And so, long story short, go back to kind of my Hollywood roots. We partnered with some pretty big names in Hollywood who actually were behind, the Fast and the Furious franchise, a lot of Marvel franchises like Captain America and the Avengers. And we basically said, can we build a GameFi layer, on top of the DEX? And so, long story short, we went through what was called season one, which was, a multi kind of, phase trading competition. And what was really cool about it was, when you entered the site, you could signal your allegiance, meaning if you had an NFT from, a certain community, and it wasn't just GameFi communities, it was also NFT communities, it was also trading communities, international communities. But long story short, you could join one of those teams. And then basically we had, multiple trading competitions where you could compete, for points based on P&L, but then also the teams were competing against one another. And then at the end of the competition, traders were rewarded and incentivized for, one, how well did they score against the leaderboard, but then also two, if you were in, a winning allegiance or winning team, there was also benefit there that trickled down to your community, that then trickled down to you as an individual trader. So it was really successful. I mean, we minted, I think, 6,000 players in the bear, which is not easy to do. And then during that, we surpassed 18 billion in trade volume as well, which was really exciting. So season two, I think, will be coming later this year. There's also, interestingly enough, a lot of community suggestions that we've listened to. And so there's going to be some, unique twists and changes to not just how it operates, but maybe even where it lives. So that was exciting. Yeah.
I like it. You think of it in terms of seasons, going back to your Hollywood roots there. Andrew, I like that.
Exactly.
That's interesting. Well, we are talking at an auspicious time in the world of crypto right now. We are coming, of course, off the heels now of the big ETF approval that everyone has been waiting for years. Everyone has been talking about this watershed, this seminal moment in the world of crypto. Well, now it's here. We've seen it come and go, and we've seen an interesting play out as a result in a lot of the prices of the crypto assets we all know and love. There's the old adage in the markets, Andrew, of buy the rumor and sell the fact. I haven't seen a more stark example of that play out in the marketplace than this whole ETF thing. We've seen massive run-ups in most of the crypto assets, including, of course, Bitcoin, and now post-approval, most of them have taken a turn to the dark side. We'll get to some of that a little bit later in the Bitcoin breakdown and the altcoin universe listeners on the show. But Andrew, since we are talking now, I have to get your thoughts on this as well. First off, just from a purely Hashflow perspective, what kind of an impact did this whole ETF debate, the approval, and then lead up to it have on you folks? Did you see a huge increase in interest or volume as a result? And now that we have a couple of weeks to look back on it, what are your thoughts on this ETF approval? Is it truly the watershed moment that everyone has been waiting for?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously pre-approval, we were in kind of the ETF hype cycle. It was driving obviously prices higher and higher from a speculation standpoint. Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, I'm just going to take more of a marketing lens to this. I mean, what drives mass adoption is a number of things, but I think one of those things is being a part of the cultural conversation, right? And so as ETF approached, we're seeing more conversation about ETF in, traditional finance publications, traditional news outlets, broadcast TV, tech outlets, things like that. And again, from a marketing perspective, I look at that as awareness. And what I've noticed in the previous cycles even is when a certain, token or digital asset starts to have extremely bullish signals, it's not uncommon to then see it break through into kind of those different news channels. So I think in general, as someone that kind of lived through the last bear, we definitely started to see a lot of the natives coming back. I think it's still a little early for, a lot of normies, but I think it's nice. I mean, you're seeing, more daily active users, you're seeing higher traded volumes. And my hope is that, again, we're at, the beginning of what will continue to be the case. When I look at the ETF at a high level, I think there's kind of two ways to look at it. So a lot of, very crypto natives, think that we're kind of moving away from like the core ethos of crypto or Bitcoin. I look at it as a good thing, and I'll kind of explain it. I look at this as kind of the crypto funnel. I think most normal folks, normies, do enter in through Bitcoin, right? It's the asset that has the most awareness. I think, again, you're more likely to find a friend that, has Bitcoin than any other asset. And then usually what happens is, someone enters crypto through Bitcoin. then maybe there's good performance on the token. They start to get more crypto curious. Hey, I want to go deeper down the crypto rabbit hole. Then a lot of times their second stop is Ethereum. And then beyond that, they start to go deeper and deeper, right? So, even in my example, it started in Ethereum, but then very much got passionate and interested in alt ones and alt2s. And then beyond that, started getting interested in a lot of different sectors. And so I think with the ETF approval, one, there is maybe quote unquote a more normie friendly way to kind of enter the crypto space. And then even if you're, a holder of ETF shares, I do think over time you become more crypto curious as you see your portfolio perform. And then that's what ends up, resulting in things like, oh, time to set up a hot wallet or cold wallet. I'm going to dive deeper into different sectors. Maybe I'm going to start to explore other chains. So I really look at this as like kind of the first step in mass awareness, mass adoption. So I think long term, I'm fairly bullish. I think it's going to take time. Obviously, this stuff doesn't happen instantly.
I like it. The normies, how they're viewing all this. Well, Andrew, we're already coming up against it. Hard to believe we're having fun. Time flies when you're having fun talking about crypto here. And we'll have to bring you back on to go deeper even into Hashflow. We have to keep going with the rest of the show. But before we do that, we'd like to leave our audience wanting more, Andrew. So give them a hint, give them a tease if you like of what they can look forward to coming down the pike from you and the team at Hashflow in the coming months.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the key thing is when we think about 2.0, it's really, again, how do we continue to grow and improve the product to, again, become kind of the best home for DeFi and traders. So things I would kind of call out, one, with the recent launch on Solana, last week we actually launched a number of new pairs, more liquidity. I think we're up to 8 million in liquidity right now. We're also going to be expanding into some new places. I'll let folks kind of speculate on that. But again, if you're an active trader and you're actively trading on certain chains, that'll hopefully create a more connected experience for you. And then I'll tease a little bit. I can't really dive deep on it, but we are building another product right now that I do think will solve a lot of the pain points of traders, both on the retail side and maybe more on the professional institutional side. So very excited for that to come to fruition, and very excited to see hopefully, a place where folks can, do a lot of activities in crypto trading activities in an environment that maybe they've been seeking for a long time but haven't been able to find. So I'm excited about that one as well.
I like it. We'll have to keep an eye on all these developments and see how they play out. Maybe bring you back on, I should say, down the road. See how all this plays out in the coming months, Andrew.
Absolutely. Would love to, yeah.
And before we go, if people want to check all this out for themselves, where should they go? What should they do, Andrew?
Yeah, so hashflow.com is obviously the home of our DEX, 2.0. We're also on Twitter at Hashflow. And then if you want to dive deeper, obviously jump into the Discord, jump into Telegram. I'm at Andrew Saunders on CT. I try to, obviously highlight a lot of what we're doing here, but also, as a trader, kind of give folks educational information, help them really up-level their skill set. But yeah, jump in. We're happy to have you.
There you go. Check him out. Follow along with all the stuff he's talking about as we follow along with this show right on into our next segment. It is time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that deep dive into all things Hashflow. A lot of interesting things going on in various aspects, including on the Solana chain. I had to get those Solana options back on the show after all. But before we get there, let's dive on into the Bitcoin Breakdown, all the action in the world's leading digital assets. Not quite as big as it was on our last show. Remember, we were off last week for the MLK holiday, so we're going back 2 weeks now. And man, what a difference 2 weeks make. Maybe you throw in an ETF approval or two in there, and all of a sudden, very different crypto landscape. In fact, on our last show, we were just shy of 47,000, 46,917. And now coming into the start of the show today, just barely north of 40,000 listeners, 40,100 exactly, as we kicked off the show. So clearly a lot of downside, nearly 7,000 handles to the dark side since our last show. So yes, I've said it on other shows on the network. This is one of the more stark examples of buy the rumor, sell the fact that I've seen in quite some time. So fascinating stuff out there. Of course, we got higher and lower in the intervening couple of weeks. We got up to nearly 49K, 48,969. That was on the 11th, so a few days after our last show. And then the low came this morning. We did break 40K ever so briefly. Got down to about 39,400 and change before rallying back up to where we were to start the show, right north of 40K. So a lot to unpack there. Of course, if you want all this data for yourselves and a lot more, head on over to amberdata.io, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires on all these analytics. Again, I was joined by our buddy Greg from Amber Data on that panel, which will be hitting the pros soon. So check that out. We got pretty deep into some fun stuff on that show. It's fun to have a securities and equity-oriented conference and turn them towards the crypto world for a little bit. So shine some light on what's going on there for those folks who are still not maybe dipping their toes into all the wonders of the crypto world. Let's get out there now. We're going to hold off on the vol for right now just because they're doing some updates, I know, on the Amber Data platform. So when we come back next week, we'll have all the updated vol numbers. But we can get into the Skew. And Skew-wise right now, things not looking great, as you might imagine. Go figure. We sold off nearly 7,000 handles. Probably going to look a little bearish in the Skew, and that's pretty much exactly what we're seeing. Let's start in the weekly Skew. And on our last show 2 weeks ago, it was flat. So we had kind of topped out. People were waiting for that next shoe to drop. Turned out that next shoe was to the dark side. And here we are 2 weeks later. That now 7-day, that weekly Skew has turned decidedly bearish again. No big surprise there. It's about a -5 right now. I'm sure if we looked at it when we broke through 40,000 earlier this morning, probably would look even more dire. But a -5 right now, so turning 5 points to the dark side. Going a little bit longer term to a more traditional window, 30 days. And we were at about a +1, actually about a +3/4. So slightly positive this time 2 weeks ago. Again, a lot of people were waiting for that next shoe to drop, and now that it has dropped, it has turned bearish out there as well, down to about a -2. Not quite as aggressive as the weekly Skew, but still looking bearish. Then we go a little bit farther out. We go out, let's say, 6 months. Calmer, cooler, saner heads usually prevailing out there. That was a full-on +5 on our last show. Coming into the start of the show today, it was a +2.1. So still bullish, still positive, but not quite as optimistic as it was a few weeks ago. Let's go out to the OI side. And is there more paper open on Deribit right now? The answer is yes, kinda. We got about 189,000 calls open on Deribit, and now it's up about 17,000. Again, not a ton. A lot of people have taken their upside off post this approval, as reflected by these numbers. So up, but not probably up as much as you would expect. And the puts at 79,000, actually down 3,000. That makes some sense as we have dropped now and broken through a lot of strikes to the downside. One of the things people do with hedges after they buy them is they take them off when they are successful. So hence that put number coming in a little bit, which is, again, not unanticipated out there. Let's go out to a product a lot of you like to sink your teeth into right now from an options perspective. Certainly in your securities account, you want a little bit of crypto flavor in that securities account, trading some options. BITO has been a popular choice for a lot of you. BITO was at a 19.3 when we kicked off the show, 1930. Puts it down 3.5 handles from where it was this time last week. It was threatening 23 on our last show. So a lot coming off there as well. That ADV, though, still looking robust. It's at about an 80,000 right now. 80,000 contracts a day. That's up 24,000 from this time 2 weeks ago. So again, all this action out there in BITO. Not surprising you folks are looking for a little bit of action on the options front. So we've seen that ADV explode from about 15, maybe 20,000 not too long ago up to 80, threatening 100,000 again, which is back where it was when the ETF first launched and everyone had to sink their teeth into it. This was the only game in town from a crypto ETF perspective, so it was optionable, certainly. So a lot of you were playing out there. And again, this whole ETF approval has continued that conversation. Today, looking respectable at about 50,000 contracts on the tape. So seems like it's probably going to hit its ADV today. The vol, as you would expect, coming in quite a bit. Again, that whole ETF was an event. At the end of the day, there was a lot of event risk priced into all of these assets. That event has now come and gone. The event risk has come and gone, and that is reflected out here in BITO as well. That vol is now about a 50. You might say, that sounds pretty lofty, and it's decent for crypto vol. Obviously, we've seen it much lower, also much higher, including on our last show when it was at a 77, a full 27 points higher. It has come off 27 points in the last 2 weeks. So again, they're taking a lot of that vol out now that the ETF is here. In terms of size positions, what's open for size out there in BITO options right now? Let's just do a top two because they're both very long term. In fact, everything here is now expiring in 2025. So The positions that were expiring this January have expired since our last show, and now it's all been replaced by all long-term upside. The top 2 positions right now, 70,000 of the Jan 35s, again expiring next year, and the top position, nearly 100,000 of the Jan 30s, again expiring next year. So I've said my piece about upside calls in general in BITO out there right now. If you're not capturing the dividend, you're missing out on a lot of the action in BITO, and the calls are not doing that. But clearly a lot of paper up there, so some folks have a vested interest out there. But the one a lot of you, pretty much, if you're trading a crypto-related option in your securities account right now, chances are it's probably Mara, aka Marathon Digital Holdings. This thing has been on quite the wild roller coaster ride, even since our last show. It's at a 1580 when we kicked off the show, down over 10, almost 11 handles, about $10.60 since our last show. So this thing has been on just quite the roller coaster ride, threatening 30 not too long ago, now getting cut pretty much in half. Just an explosion of action out there. The ADV reflecting that now. The ADV is now 606,000 contracts a day going up in this name. That's up 123,000 since our last show 2 weeks ago. To give you some frame of reference, VIX is not that much higher than that. VIX is shy of 700. I think it's in the 680s right now. It was right around 606 just a few weeks ago. So you're talking a VIX level of average daily volume now in Marathon Digital Holdings. So a lot of you out there are slinging some Marathon. That's reflected again today. 334,000 contracts on the tape. So it seems like it might be a light day today. I don't think we're going to hit that number by the end of the day. The vol also still explosive, 112. Again, things got cut in half over the past 2 weeks, so it's hard to argue with a below triple-digit vol level, but that's also down 33 points from what it was just 2 weeks ago. So again, that vol coming off the top in just epic fashion. In terms of size positions, we got stuff a little bit closer to home here in Mara. The top 2 positions out there, number 2, 30,000 of the March 17 puts, followed by number 1, also 30,000 of the March 17 calls. So there could be a synthetic going there. Could be someone slinging a 17 straddle out there as well, in which case, those are usually not my favorite trade, but in a name that got cut in half in the past couple of weeks, a long straddle would have done pretty well. So wow, yeah, there is just a lot of fascinating paper there. We could spend the rest of the show digging into Mara, but we have to keep on rolling, listeners, and explore the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe, the portion of the show where we break down everything outside of the big dog, which is Bitcoin, except for right now, we talk about the top 10 from a market cap perspective. Obviously, going to be a little bit lower to break into the top 10 than what it cost us a couple of weeks ago, as that crypto tide has turned a little bit to the dark side out there. Still number 10 hanging out. We have Avalanche, so our old buddies Tron and some others that were clinging to number 10 have been now kicked to the curb. Avalanche holding in at the number 10 spot with about exactly 11 billion worth of market cap. So again, we're still managing to cling to 11 billion to break into the top 10. That is nothing to sneeze at. Again, just a few months ago, it was 7.5 to 8 billion. So 11 billion, nothing to sneeze at. Number 9, our old friend Doge. So managing to kick up a notch. It was number 10 2 weeks ago. 11.75 billion for number 9. Number 8, Cardano, 17.2 billion. Number 7, USD Coin, 25.6 billion. Number 6, it's just been number 6 forever. It's XRP, can't get out of its own way. It was 52 cents when we talked about it 2 weeks ago. 52 cents again today. 28.75 billion worth of market cap. Number 5, Solana. We were just talking about it. Man, what a journey Solana has been on of late, listeners. 36.4 billion worth of market cap for Solana. Number 4, BNB, 46.1 billion. Number 3, it's Tether, 94.8 billion. Number 2, it's ETH, 281 billion. And the number 1, the big dog, Bitcoin, 782 billion worth of market cap. Not quite the 1T level, but still looking fairly robust, all things considered. Interestingly enough, we talked about the big sell-off in Bitcoin. ETH has managed to remain relatively afloat, given everything we've seen out there. On our last show 2 weeks ago, 23.56, coming in to start the show today, 23.21. So it's only down 35 handles. Given everything that's unfolded over the past 2 weeks, that's actually fairly impressive. The high came again on the 11th, 26.22, And the low came, again, just this morning, 23.05. So we didn't even dip below 2,300 since our last show, which is fascinating to watch. Let's get on out to the Skew now, listeners. And again, unlike Bitcoin, which was still flat to slightly positive on the show 2 weeks ago, ETH had already turned to the negative, and now it's starting to turn that way even more. On our last show, the weekly Skew was negative 3.3, so decidedly bearish, which, again, turned out not to really play out, given the fact that we've seen ETH pretty much tread water for the better part of the last couple of weeks. We had some highs and lows, but nothing crazy. And then, of course, this show, almost negative 5, negative 4.7 on the weekly Skew. So obviously in the near-dated stuff, folks are leaning to the dark side on ETH. 30-day Skew, it was about flat on our show 2 weeks ago. This week, negative 3.25, so it has swung over 3 points to the dark side. And longer-term Skew was at about a positive 5 almost on our show last week. It was 4.6. This week, it is down to about a 0.8, so coming in almost 4 points. So pretty much flat now compared to the positive close to 5 it was a couple of weeks ago. Unlike ETH, though, unlike Bitcoin, we are seeing a lot of OI pile in to ETH right now. 2.25 million contracts open on the call front on Deribit. That's up about exactly 500,000 from this time 2 weeks ago. So, folks, still playing fast and loose out there in the calls. The puts also looking a little bit frothier as well. 670,000 open there, up 90,000 from this time last week. All right, let's run through some of the rest of the altcoin universe, and then we'll get out of here for this week, listeners. Let's go out to Solana. We were just talking about this a lot at the start of the show. What a journey Solana has been on, even since our last show. It was 99.25 on our last show, 83.75, down 15.5 handles from 2 weeks ago, I should say. So, yes, a lot of topsy-turviness in Solana. Are you back on the Solana train, listeners? Did you wash your hands of it post-FTX and never get back on it? Maybe that might be a good little flash poll for our crypto audience out there. In terms of XRP, you know the deal. 52 cents. It's kind of been hanging out there pretty much forever. So not a heck of a lot going on out there in XRP land. Our old friend Doge, it was 8.1 cents 2 weeks ago, 8.1 cents this week. So kind of treading water out there as well. Litecoin, a little bit of evolution. It was 66.89 on our last show, 67.45 this week, up a little over half a buck. Cardano, 53 cents last week, or last show, I should say, 48 cents. This week's off a little over a nickel. Polkadot, 7.44 last show, 6.40 this week's off a little over a buck out there as well. And everybody's favorite, Shiba Inu, 1,000,000,9.4 this week, 8.9, so coming in a little bit out there as well. So unfortunately for all you folks out there, doesn't seem like the Shiba Lambos are coming this week. All right, everybody. That music means we've come to the end of another epic journey through the world of crypto. I want to thank our guest, Andrew Saunders from Hashflow. Check them out, hashflow.com, or on Twitter, all the other places he mentioned there. Their Discord, a lot of places you can reach out to them and see what they have going on over there. Speaking of things that are going on, if you head on over to Add Options for us over there on Twitter, you could find our current question of the week. We're asking you how you like to play your broad market volatility. We've asked you last week what option strategies you're planning to employ. This could also apply to crypto this year. Most of you, 39.5%, came in saying you want long calls, long puts, and verticals. You're looking to buy some premium. If you're looking at a name like Mara, it's kind of hard to argue with that. Covered calls and short puts came in second with 31.6%, 21.1% for straddles, strangles, and butterflies, and then 7.9% only for the 201 or even the 301 level stuff, the calendars and diagonals. We also asked you a fun flash poll back right after our show a couple of weeks ago saying now that the Bitcoin ETF is finally approved, do you think Bitcoin is going to close positive on the year? And 56.7% of you turning into some hodlers saying heck yes, 17.9% saying heck no, and a full quarter, 25.4% saying you have washed your hands of crypto in the light of that ETF. So fascinating stuff. I don't know if the hodlers are still feeling as optimistic right now, but again, we shall see. In the meantime, if you're not listening to the rest of the network, you are missing out on a whole bunch of great content, including a lot of great educational stuff coming at you every Wednesday with Options Bootcamp. And of course, great shows like Volatility Views and the Advisor's Option and all sorts of other fun This Week in Futures options. So check it out if you're not listening to the full network. If I know for a lot of you crypto natives, it's a lot you can ease yourself in. And then once you hit that next level, you can head on over to theoptionsinsider.com/pro. That right now is the only place to sink your ears into that awesome panel I did with Greg and JJ from IG and Henry Schwartz from SIBO and a whole bunch of other fun going on. Unless you were there in the audience at Stack, you missed it. So head on over to the Pro. It's the only place to sink your teeth into. Of course, other great content there as well. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro. Have to get on out of here for this week. Back again tomorrow and throughout the rest of the week with our usual array of network content until we're back again next Monday, another episode of the Crypto Rundown. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amber Data. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amber Data delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amber Data eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.